Australia's cemeteries aren't just historic, they're hiding things that still move after midnight. Behind the marble angels and silent pathways, countless stories of shadowy figures, unexplained footsteps, and restless spirits have terrified visitors for decades. Tonight, we're stepping inside the 15 most haunted cemeteries in the entire country. And once you hear what happens in these places after dark, you'll never look at a graveyard the same way again. One, Goodna Cemetery, Queensland. At the edge of Brisbane, where the fog never seems to lift, lies Goodna Cemetery, a place locals whisper about but rarely dare to enter after sundown. They say the air changes there, turning heavy, almost watchful, as if something unseen is waiting just beyond the graves. Maybe it's just a story, or maybe it isn't, because every person who steps inside claims they hear the same thing: footsteps on gravel when no one is behind them. Some blame the old asylum nearby, saying spirits of forgotten patients were buried here in unmarked ground. Others speak of the headless angel, a toppled statue that supposedly moves positions overnight. But the strangest reports come from drivers who park outside the gates. Fingerprints of small children appear on their car windows, even when no children were near. Some laugh it off. Some swear they felt a tiny hand tug their sleeve in the darkness. People who investigate the cemetery say the silence is the worst part, too complete, too unnatural. Birds won't sing, wind won't move, and sometimes the shadows between the gum trees seem to shift, as if stepping closer when you're not looking. If you ever visit Goodna Cemetery, go ahead. Walk the narrow path between the crooked stones. Just listen carefully, and if you hear footsteps matching your own, don't turn around. You might not like what you see following you out. To Rookwood Cemetery, New South Wales. There's a reason they call Rookwood the City of the Dead, stretching over 700 acres. It's not just Australia's largest cemetery. It's a labyrinth of silence, where more than 1 million souls are said to rest uneasily. But rest might not be the right word. At night, when the fog curls between the marble angels and iron gates, people say Rookwood wakes up. Visitors have reported seeing lanterns flicker deep among the graves, moving without a source. Some hear distant weeping, others the sound of boots crunching gravel in perfect rhythm with their own. Cemetery workers whisper about the disused railway line, the old mortuary station that once delivered coffins straight into the grounds. They say the train still arrives some nights, headlight glowing pale and silent, vanishing before it reaches the end of the track. One caretaker once found fresh flowers laid on a century-old grave every single morning. For weeks, no one ever saw who placed them. Cameras caught nothing but static. Locals avoid driving past after midnight, claiming that pale figures appear along the fences, watching the road with hollow eyes. Maybe it's imagination. Maybe it's memory, or maybe Rookwood never really stopped being alive. If you ever find yourself walking through its endless rows at dusk, remember this is a city where time stands still, and even the dead might be listening. So when you leave, don't look back. Some say that's how they follow you home. Waverley Cemetery, New South Wales. Perched above the crashing waves of Bronte, Waverley Cemetery looks peaceful from afar. White marble glowing under the sun, crosses standing like silent guardians. But when night falls and the sea mist rolls in, the entire cliffside shifts into something far colder. Locals say the ocean doesn't just echo here, it whispers. And sometimes it whispers back. Visitors walking the coastal path have reported seeing a lone figure standing among the tombstones, staring out at the black ocean. When approached, the figure fades not like a shadow, but like breath on glass. Others speak of hearing footsteps pacing behind them, though the stones remain undisturbed. And there are those who claim to hear a woman singing a soft, broken melody carried by the wind, always coming from a grave that overlooks the sea. Old stories speak of shipwrecked sailors buried here, restless souls who never reach the shore alive. Some say their lanterns still flicker on stormy nights, glowing faintly between the graves before vanishing into the mist. Even cemetery staff avoid certain sections after dusk, especially the narrow rows where cold air coils around your ankles, no matter the season. If you ever visit Waverley at twilight, stand still and listen. If the wind suddenly dies, if the waves fall silent for a heartbeat, leave. Because in that brief moment of perfect quiet, they say the dead gather close and wait for someone who doesn't know the way back. Or Ballaarat Old Cemetery, Victoria. In the heart of Ballaarat, where the gold rush once roared with life, the Ballaarat Old Cemetery now sits in a silence heavy enough to feel on your skin. By day it seems ordinary weathered headstones, iron fences, the usual stillness of the past. But when dusk settles and the shadows fall between the gum trees, this place reveals a darker memory. They say the spirits of miners who never found their fortune still wander here, searching or warning. Visitors often speak of a strange sensation the moment they step inside, like the ground itself is watching. Some feel a sudden coldness that wraps around their ankles. Others hear wheezing breaths behind them near the Eureka rebels' graves. One traveler claimed she followed the sound of a crying child, only to find an unmarked grave that felt warm to the touch, as if someone had just been standing there. Caretakers tell stories of lantern lights floating above the older plots, drifting slowly before blinking out all at once. And there's a patch of earth locals avoid entirely, a corner where compasses spin wildly, photos blur, and dogs refuse to enter, growling at seemingly empty air. If you choose to walk the narrow paths after sunset, keep your eyes forward and your steps steady, because at Ballaarat Old Cemetery, the past isn't buried, it's listening. And if you hear footsteps falling softly behind yours, don't stop. They say the moment you turn around is the moment something decides to follow you home. Castlemaine Cemetery, Victoria. Hidden among the rolling hills of Campbell's Creek, Castlemaine Cemetery looks ordinary at first glance, quiet, sun-bleached, swallowed by eucalyptus trees, but locals will tell you the silence here isn't peaceful. It's expectant, as if something waits between the leaning headstones, watching every visitor who dares to step off the main path. They say the trouble begins near the older sections, where the graves of gold rush miners crowd together like broken teeth. People often feel a sudden pressure in the air, a weight on their chest that makes breathing difficult. Some report hearing picks striking rock beneath the soil, steady and rhythmic. Long after midnight, others swear they've seen a figure in dusty work clothes standing among the graves, motionless, head bowed only to vanish when approached. One of the most chilling stories comes from a local historian who claimed he heard someone whisper his name directly into his ear, even though he stood alone among the tombs. His recording equipment captured nothing but a long, low breath too close, too human. Visitors also speak of a particular pathway where shadows move against the direction of the light, drifting slowly across the gravel. Dogs refuse to walk there. Children cry when carried past. And phones die instantly, no matter the battery. If you ever find yourself wandering Castlemaine Cemetery as the sun slips behind the trees, remember this. Not every grave is empty, and not every spirit is resting. And if the whisper you hear sounds like it's coming from just behind your shoulder, don't turn around. Fremantle Cemetery, Western Australia. Fremantle Cemetery isn't just a resting place, it's a story carved into stone, whispered by the wind that sweeps in from the Indian Ocean. By day, it's a maze of marble angels and rusted iron gates. By night, it becomes something else entirely. A place where time folds in on itself, and the dead remember the living. It's here that some of Australia's most infamous souls are buried: murderers, convicts, and forgotten sailors. But it's not their names that haunt visitors. It's the feeling that someone is always just out of sight. People walking the narrow paths after dark describe hearing heavy footsteps, following close behind, stopping when they stop, breathing when they breathe. Some have seen flickers of light moving between graves too low for lanterns, too fast for flashlights. The grave of serial killer Eric Edgar Cook draws the most fear. Locals claim that at midnight, a tall shadow appears near his headstone. Standing perfectly still, cameras malfunction, air grows thick, and a faint voice mutters words that no one can understand. Cemetery staff refuse to go near that section alone, saying the atmosphere there feels wrong, like the air itself is listening. Others have reported the sound of weeping near the war memorials. Though no one is ever there, a groundskeeper once followed the crying to an open plot, only to find a fresh indentation in the soil, as if someone had been kneeling there moments before. Fremantle Cemetery holds more than bones and memories. It holds echoes. And if you walk its paths at night and feel a sudden chill brushing the back of your neck, don't assume it's the sea breeze. Sometimes the ones buried deepest are the ones still reaching out. So, St. Patrick's Cemetery, North Parramatta, New South Wales. Hidden behind quiet suburban streets, St. Patrick's Cemetery looks harmless in daylight, a patch of weathered headstones shaded by ancient oaks. But when night falls, the place seems to breathe. The wind shifts, the trees creak, and the stillness turns sharp, like something unseen is listening. Locals call it the oldest Catholic burial ground in Sydney, but few dare to visit after dark. They say it remembers everyone who ever stepped inside, even those who never left. The first stories came from nearby residents who heard church bells ringing long after midnight, even though the chapel had been silent for decades. Then came reports of candlelight flickering between the graves, soft, steady, and moving as if carried by an invisible hand. Security footage caught nothing, just static. Visitors describe hearing whispers in Irish accents, soft prayers, sometimes laughter floating through the cold air. Others speak of a woman in a long black veil standing near the priest's section, her head bowed, hands clasped, until she fades into the mist. Some say she's the spirit of a grieving widow buried with her child. Others believe she's something older, something that guards the ground itself. Or there's a particular headstone that chills even the bravest explorers, a cracked marble cross said to bleed rust red during heavy rain. Scientists call it mineral runoff. The locals call it a warning. If you find yourself drawn to St. Patrick's after sundown, bring light but don't trust it to stay lit. And if the night grows suddenly still, if every sound around you dies at once, leave. Because here, silence isn't peace, it's attention. And the moment you notice it, it's already noticed you. Old Sydney Burial Ground, New South Wales. Beneath the bright lights of modern Sydney, buried under the footsteps of thousands, lies the Old Sydney Burial Ground, a forgotten cemetery hidden beneath the concrete of Town Hall. Most people pass over it every day without knowing what sleeps just below. But those who do know say the dead here never learned how to be quiet. It was the first official cemetery of the colony, a place marked by disease, violence, and hurried burials. Many graves were shallow, some unmarked, and many bodies were never moved when the city decided to build on top of them. Workers during construction reported tools vanishing, cold hands brushing their shoulders, and faint voices calling from under the earth. One man swore he heard knocking from beneath the floorboards, steady, desperate, and human. Today, people walking through Town Hall late at night describe sudden pockets of freezing air, as if stepping into someone else's breath. Security guards have reported figures drifting across the lobby after closing, faded silhouettes dressed in colonial clothing, moving without sound. Cameras pick up shifting shadows in empty hallways, and alarms trigger at impossible hours, always pointing to the same spot where the oldest graves once lay. Some say the spirits here wander because they were forgotten. Others say they were disturbed. But everyone agrees on one thing. The ground beneath Town Hall is not empty. It's waiting. So if you ever feel a cold hand brush your arm as you walk past the building, don't slow down. And whatever you do, don't look at the floor beneath your feet. You might realize someone down there is looking back. It's Camperdown Cemetery, New South Wales. Tucked behind old stone walls in the heart of Newtown, Camperdown Cemetery feels like a forgotten pocket of time, quiet, overgrown, and deeply unsettling once the sun slips away. Locals say the air changes the moment you step through the iron gates. Everything feels heavier, colder, as if the ground itself is holding its breath, waiting to see if you'll keep walking. Its most persistent legend is the Bathsheba ghost, a eerie and faint, pale figure said to wander between the tombstones near the old church wall. Many have seen her from the corner of their eye, a woman in 19th century dress standing perfectly still, hands clasped, her face obscured by shadow. But when they turn to look directly, she's gone, leaving only the smell of damp earth and a feeling that someone is still standing behind them. Visitors report strange sounds echoing through the cemetery at night, footsteps circling them, the scrape of metal against a stone, whispered conversations and accents long dead. One group of students claim they heard laughter, soft, breathy, childlike, coming from behind a row of graves. When they shone a flashlight, every headstone nearby was warm, except one, cold as ice, even in daylight. There are places where animals refuse to walk, cameras malfunction, batteries drain instantly, and shadows move in ways that make no sense. Groundskeepers avoid a particular corner near the massive fig trees, saying the air there presses against your chest, like someone unseen is trying to push you back. Camperdown Cemetery isn't loud with hauntings. It's quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that leans in close. So if you ever feel a breath on your neck while walking those narrow paths, don't turn around. Some stories say that's exactly what she's waiting for. In Toowong Cemetery, Queensland, high on the slopes overlooking Brisbane, Toowong Cemetery stretches out like a city of stone, vast, winding, and eerily alive after dusk. Locals say the cemetery doesn't just hold history, it remembers it. Every rusted gate, every crooked pathway feels charged, as if thousands of unseen eyes are watching from behind the mausoleums. Even the birds avoid it once the sun drops behind the ridge. The most whispered legend is that of the Blue Lady, a spectral figure in a pale dress who wanders the old Baptist section. Visitors claim she appears in moments of stillness, drifting between graves with a soft blue glow, her face hidden beneath her hair. Those who've seen her say she doesn't walk, she floats, and if you stare too long, she lifts her head. No one who's claimed to see what's underneath has ever described it. Shadows roam the Soldier's Corner, where footsteps echo without a source. Cyclists using the cemetery as a shortcut after dark report, hearing the metallic click of boots marching behind them, always stopping when they stop, always one step too close. One groundskeeper insists he heard a full conversation near the war memorial, but when he turned, every grave around him stood silent and still. Even the trees seem haunted. Some nights, the air beneath them turns icy cold, and a low moan drifts through the branches, like someone trapped just out of sight. Equipment fails, lights flicker, dogs refuse to enter certain sections, barking wildly at what their owners can't see. If you ever walk the twisting paths of Toowong Cemetery after nightfall, keep your pace steady and your eyes forward, because here, the dead don't rest, and when the wind suddenly stops, that's when you know you're not alone anymore. Nundah Cemetery, Queensland. Nestled quietly in Brisbane's northern suburbs, Nundah Cemetery looks harmless. A tidy patch of green surrounded by gum trees and whispering wind. But those who live nearby know better. They say this place hums after dark. The air thickens, the silence deepens, and the shadows move just a little too naturally. It began with strange sounds, soft knocks echoing across the headstones, the faint scrape of metal, footsteps pacing between graves long after midnight. Locals blame possums, until visitors began hearing something else. Voices, not loud, not clear, just murmurs. Overlapping whispers that seem to come from beneath the soil. Some say they sound like prayers. Others say they're warnings. The cemetery dates back to the mid-1800s. One of Brisbane's oldest resting places. Beneath the grass lie settlers, soldiers, and children lost to epidemics. But according to legend, one grave doesn't belong. It's said to hold a man buried without ceremony, shunned by his town. His name was never carved in stone. And on still nights, when fog curls low across the ground, people see a dark figure wandering the rows have pulled low, coat dragging through the dirt, vanishing at the unmarked patch of earth where he's said to lie. One security guard once tried to confront the figure, shining his torch straight at it. The light cut through nothing but mist. When he turned back toward the gate, the figure was behind him, closer, silent, and real enough to cast a shadow. If you visit Nundah Cemetery after sundown, listen carefully. The whispers start softly, just a rustle of wind. But if you stay too long, they grow louder, like dozens of voices crowding close. And when you finally run for the gate, some say the whispers follow you all the way home. Ipswich General Cemetery, Queensland. By day, Ipswich General Cemetery looks like any other resting place, rows of crumbling headstones, sunlit grass, and the distant hum of traffic. But when the last light fades, this ground changes, the temperature drops, the cicadas fall silent, and the whispers begin. Locals say this cemetery never sleeps, it only waits. It's one of Queensland's oldest burial grounds, filled with miners, settlers, and plague victims buried in haste during the epidemics of the 1800s. Some graves were never marked, some names were never known, and it's those forgotten dead that seem the most restless. Visitors walking the central path at night often report hearing footsteps, crunching directly behind them, slow, heavy, perfectly in rhythm, though no one is there. Others describe a soft sobbing near the children's section, a sound that stops the moment light touches it. One chilling tale tells of a young couple who entered the cemetery after midnight, daring each other to find the oldest grave. They never made it far. The woman later said she saw lanterns moving among the trees, 3 lights, floating in silence. When she blinked, they were gone. But the photos on her phone showed faint, blurred faces glowing where the lights had been. Caretakers speak of the White Lady of Ipswich, a pale figure drifting between the graves before dawn. Some say she's searching for her child. Others believe she's warning visitors to leave before sunrise. The cemetery's iron gates creak like whispers when the wind blows, and some swear they hear their own names carried through the air. So if you ever find yourself standing there under the dim streetlights, and you feel that familiar chill slide down your spine, don't call out, don't answer. Because here at Ipswich General Cemetery, the dead still remember the living, and sometimes they answer back. Karrakatta Cemetery, Western Australia. In the quiet suburbs of Perth, Karrakatta Cemetery stretches out like a marble maze, vast, orderly, and deceptively calm. But as night settles over the eucalyptus trees, this place takes on a different life. The air grows colder, the shadows lengthen, and the silence becomes so deep it feels alive, like something beneath the soil is listening for your next step. One of the oldest burial grounds in Western Australia, Karrakatta holds generations of settlers, soldiers, and children. Yet visitors say it's the older sections, the crumbling headstones, the sunken graves where the atmosphere turns strange. People walking alone often feel someone matching their pace just behind them. Turn around, and the path is empty. stand still, and the unseen footsteps keep moving. Cemetery staff whisper about the children's corner, a section where toys left on graves move during the night. Some claim they've found dolls facing a different direction, balls rolling uphill, tiny handprints appearing on fogged car windows after patrols. Skeptics laugh until they see it themselves. There are stories of a figure dressed in dark clothing drifting between the mausoleums, a tall silhouette with no visible face. One groundskeeper swears he watched it glide across the gravel without a single sound. When he blinked, it vanished behind a row of marble angels, though there was nowhere for anyone to hide. Electronic devices die instantly in certain areas. Photos blur into streaks of white, and on windless nights, mourners report hearing a low humming echo between the graves, like a distant choir buried deep underground. If you ever walk through Karrakatta Cemetery after dusk, pay attention to the air. If it suddenly grows colder, if the hairs on your arms lift for no reason, leave quickly. Because here, the dead don't just rest quietly. Sometimes they follow. Melrose Cemetery, South Australia. At the foot of Mount Remarkable, the tiny town of Melrose holds a cemetery that seems far too quiet for how alive it feels. Melrose Cemetery is small, just a scattering of weathered graves, old iron fences, and crooked trees bending under the weight of time. But locals say that after dark, this peaceful patch of earth changes. The air thickens with the scent of rain, even on dry nights, and a low hum rolls through the hills, as if the mountain itself remembers the dead. The first settlers buried here faced harsh winters and isolation. Many were laid to rest with little ceremony, their graves marked only by stones. But people say those early souls never truly left. Travelers passing through the nearby road at night often report faint lantern lights flickering between the trees. Small, golden, and moving in a slow procession, like a funeral that never ends. When they stop to look, the lights vanish, leaving behind only the echo of footsteps on gravel. One story tells of a local woman who visited her ancestor's grave and found fresh flowers there every morning, though no one in the town claimed to place them. When she set up a camera, it recorded only static, but at exactly midnight, the footage caught a whisper, soft, close, and unmistakably human. Still waiting. Others speak of a spectral figure standing near the cemetery gate, a man in a long coat, hat in hand, staring out toward the town. Some think he's a miner who died alone. Some say he's waiting for someone buried far away. No one who's approached him has ever seen his face. Melrose Cemetery doesn't scream with hauntings. It murmurs. It breathes. And if you linger long enough beneath those ancient trees, the night begins to feel aware of you. So when the wind rises suddenly, carrying faint voices from the mountain, leave. Because in Melrose, the dead are still listening. And sometimes they answer when you do. Springvale Botanical Cemetery, Victoria. Springvale Botanical Cemetery may look serene, lush gardens, winding paths, and lakes reflecting the sky. But beneath its beauty lies a stillness that unsettles even the bravest visitors. It is one of Australia's largest cemeteries, a place where thousands rest. Yet the nights never feel empty. As darkness settles over the immaculate lawns, the air thickens with a strange weight, as if something beyond the living is quietly moving through the trees. Staff speak of lights that drift across the lake long after, closing soft orbs gliding above the water, glowing blue or gold before fading into the mist. Security cameras catch nothing but a sudden pulse of static each time they appear. Visitors on late evening strolls report hearing footsteps on the garden path, slow, deliberate, following closely. Though the gravel remains untouched, there are whispered stories about the reflection garden, where people claim to see figures standing among the hedges, shadows with no faces, watching but never approaching. One woman said she saw her late father sitting on a bench near the water, hands folded, head bowed. When she called his name, he lifted his face and vanished. Caretakers avoid the older sections after sunset. They say the temperature drops without warning. Like stepping into another season, flowers placed on graves disappear overnight, replaced by fresh ones no one remembers leaving. And some mornings, faint handprints appear on the glass panels of the mausoleum, too small, too perfect, as if left by someone long gone. Springvale is beautiful. Yeah, but beauty can hide things. So if you ever walk its quiet paths at dusk and feel the hairs on your neck rise, don't linger. The gardens may look alive, but not everything moving through them breathes. And if you hear footsteps falling softly behind you, keep walking. If these cemeteries sent a chill down your spine, just wait. Australia's haunted asylums and abandoned towns are even darker. I've linked the next story right here. Tap in before you scroll, because the deeper we go, the stranger it gets.